The new drug was designed for the express purpose of a psychological test, to see whether there really is some or other kind of connection between personality and dreams, whether what we see at night after we go to sleep is related to our internal psyche or not. We were all kept in a control room, a place designed to make sleep as easy and natural as possible. We filled out extensive personality tests, ran psychological tests, and reported daily about our experience about a month before we even started taking the pills, in order for the scientists to gather data. There was also, of course, a control group who did not take the drug. Then the actual experiment started. We were to report on everything we saw, felt, experienced, describe any kind of difference in our dreams. The pill was meant to heighten emotions in dreams, make them more vivid, but it didn't go the way it was supposed to. Up until that point, we were free to talk to anyone, both the control patients and the others, as well as people outside of the experiment. But after the first night's dreams, we were effectively cut off from the world outside of the experiment. The first night, I dreamt that I was in a giant maze. The walls were higher than I could climb, let alone see. It felt as though I were there for hours, trying to find my way out. I felt like the walls were, over time, closing in on me. All the while I knew that I was being tested, although I did not realize that time that I was dreaming. In the end, I was only able to wake up once I made it through the maze. I described my experience to the scientists and psychologists, talked for what felt like hours about the experience. During breakfast, everyone in the mess hall seemed to be awkward and quiet. The usually chatty, bright, and cheerful people all seemed to have lost their joy. I wondered if it was because of the lack of communication with their families that had been announced earlier that day. I ate in silence. The only sound throughout the entire time was cutlery against plates and bowls. It was immensely uncomfortable. The day was spent dreading the coming night, trying to fill the time with pretty much anything. I finally fell into an uneasy sleep, and this time, I wish I knew that I was dreaming. I was led into a cave by some small, devilish creatures, and given a tour of sorts. For the first while, there was nothing. It just seemed like a scary, claustrophobic cave entrance. Eventually, after some time walking, or rather crawling, through the narrow cave, we came to what resembled a scene straight from hell. There, I saw more of the small demon creatures, thousands of them, if not millions, all being tormented and tortured by one another, many of them to the point of being ill. It was just sounds of violent vomiting and screaming, contorted evil laughter and sad whimperings. It was hell for demons. I panicked at the idea of being unable to return to the outside world, at the idea that I would not be let outside, and would, even if I tried to run, not be able to find my way out again through all the intricate twists and turns of the various tunnels. When I finally got out, still escorted by the small creatures, I immediately woke up. For a while after the dream had ended, I was terribly shaken, feeling ill as a result of everything I'd witnessed. I answered the question the scientists and therapists had for me in a daze, and headed to breakfast feeling more tired than I was the previous night going to sleep. That morning, the patients were more talkative. Everyone now spoke in a low murmur. It was as if everybody had, somewhere overnight, formed cliques, small groups of people who sat and talked to each other, without exception. My own group was decided for me, it seemed. 3 people roughly my own age, with one seemingly a bit older. Despite being the smallest person there, he seemed to assume his age meant he'd be the natural leader, and he wasted no time in telling everyone his plan. "It's these pills, these damn pills," he whispered as loudly as one could whisper. "What do you mean?" I asked, not whispering but talking softly. "What do I mean? What do you mean, what do I mean? These crazy dreams, that's what I mean. We're all having them and it's driving everyone insane." "Oh, I merely said. It never occurred to me that everyone had been quiet the day before due to them all, by some miraculous stroke of fate, also having these horrid nightmares. Listen, none of us are taking that pill tonight, do you understand? He insisted. I nodded. I didn't like this man, but I agreed with him. Something was seriously wrong. And looking back at it now, the cold and callous response from the scientists and even the psychologists was not normal. Each of us has a small trash bin. I'm pretty sure they'll check it in the morning. But until then, you should have at least one night's good sleep. Do you understand? Yeah, I'll do it, I told him, skeptically. I was unsure if his plan would work. I had assumed the researchers checked everything that we were doing, but if they had cameras set up in the rooms, they would surely say something immediately if they saw me throwing out the pills. I went to sleep feeling nervous and anxious for different reasons this time. That night, I dreamt of a large factory. Someone was guiding me through it. It was so large, so massive, that it literally took days for us to walk up and down the halls. I couldn't remember why I was there to begin with. I just knew that I was so far into the building that I would never be able to get out on my own again. I asked the woman walking alongside me whether we were almost done. She shook her head and smiled at me. I panicked then, realizing that I was dreaming, screaming and stomping around like a child throwing a tantrum for what felt like half an hour before I finally woke up. For some time after I got out of the dream, I wasn't really sure that I had honestly woken up. I kept asking where the exit to the factory was, unwilling to believe that I really had managed to get out of there. It took me more than an hour to realize that I had not taken the pill and still had the abhorrent dreams. Because of the earlier outburst, the scientists and psychologists insisted it was better that I stay in my room that day to recover from the episode, as they called it. I racked what was left of my brain trying to figure out what had happened. Had they spiked my food, somehow gotten the pill down, or given me a shot while I had gone to sleep? As I was staring up at the ceiling, the answer hit me. It was something in the air, literally. All the professionals had worn masks whenever they entered the room. Even the people serving the food and handing out the pills were all wearing masks. It was late by the time I came to this realization, and felt tired. I briefly thought about asphyxiating myself, and then I was asleep, dreaming again. My last thought as I drifted off was that the days in the lab had become shorter and shorter as the dreams had gotten progressively longer. This time, I knew from the beginning that I was dreaming. I had always hated the ocean. I'd expressed this hatred on many occasions. So, of course, my worst nightmare would be to be surrounded by it, with no way of escaping. I found myself in a submarine. The man guiding me around the interior seemed a fool, unwilling to admit that we'd eventually run out of oxygen, insisting that we'd be fine down here forever, going on to tell me about the excellent service offered by the staff that all lived within the confines of the submarine. I sat in the half-darkness, surrounded by the color I hate most, surrounded by the actual thing I hate most, surrounded by idiots who insist we'll be fine down here forever. All the while, I cannot wake up, no matter what I do. Maybe after I die of asphyxiation down here, then I'll wake back up, and finally be able to walk away from this absurd study. Maybe. I contemplate doing it on my own. Wonder what would happen if it didn't work, as I stare out at my own personal hell. Thank you for listening and watching. All links and references are in the description below.